You're listening to Wycombe Sound, online, on Radio Player, and on 106.6 FM.
A very good evening to you. Welcome along to the Wycombe Wanderers Show here on Wycombe Sound. I am Bob Johnson, and I'm on my own this week. There is no Colin Besley here. And then on next week's show, Colin will be back next week, but I actually won't be here. But don't worry, we haven't split up or anything. We are very much still the Anton deck of Wycombe Sound. We will be back together for the first Wycombe Wanderers Show, the first Thursday in 2022. Coming up on the programme tonight, obviously, there's no game to reflect upon from Saturday, and now there's no game to look forward to on Boxing Day either, which is a bit sad, but we've still got lots of good stuff for you this evening. So we're going to hear from Wycombe Wanderers commentator Phil Catchpole in the latest in our series of interviews with people who cover Wycombe Wanderers in the media. We will be hearing from Phil how he got behind the microphone at Adams Park to become the Wycombe Wanderers commentator. We will also be catching up in our former players section with winger Danny Senda, and we'll be hearing from Gareth Ainsworth as well, who will be looking forward to the game, fingers crossed, against Ipswich Town on the 29th of December. That is all to come between now and 8 o'clock. Of course, we had the news then yesterday that we were all slightly dreading, that the Cambridge United game is off because they've informed the EFL. Let's not call it. I still don't know why the EFL changed to those silly initials when, the Football League. What could be a better name than the Football League? And so I'm going to call it that, in the same way that I still think of it as being the Milk Cup, not whatever it is these days. Cambridge informed the Football League that they wouldn't be able to fulfil the fixture. And of course, we've been here before. That's what happened with regards to the Bolton Wanderers game. Really, really wonderful, I think. Great news coming out of the club today that actually they have donated all of the food from the game against Cambridge United that would have been used on Boxing Day to the One Can Trust. Will, the chef, who of course has been on the Wycombe Wanderers Show before, going along to our local food bank to drop off the packaged and tinned food, and also the fresh food items as well that were going to be used are going to be given to the local fire service, who of course will be on duty throughout the Christmas period. But really, really nice gesture that of the club. Anyway, without further ado, let's get on to tonight's first item then. I caught up with Wycombe commentator Phil Catchpole earlier on this week to have a chat about how he got into the media. But first of all, we reflected on the fact that it's been a very sad couple of days at Adams Park, as we've lost a goalkeeping legend Gary Lester and Trust member David Robertson.
Yeah, terrible news. I knew David was ill, but it still came as a shock because David was just so full of life and energy and positivity, and you'd see him buzzing around Adams Park on a match day, always with a killer tan if he'd been cycling out in Spain or somewhere in the week and back for match day, but always just so excited for the game, always really happy to chat about today that the opponents of that game, or how Wycombe were getting on. Really good view of the club as well. He loved that club. He really loved Wycombe Wanderers, and I don't think people realise just how much work he did for the trust, especially when things were really, really hard. And it's due to the people like David Robertson that Wycombe Wanderers are in the position they are today. In fact, still, in the Football League even. And it's so really, really sad because, like I said, he was just so full of life and energy. And yeah, when I found out the news, I was very, very sad about it. And best wishes to his family and friends as well, and everyone at the club, because he's going to be a massive miss.
And I think when we're talking about the trust as well, we need to remember that, as you rightly say, really without those guys, there wouldn't be a club. They kept it going when actually nobody else was really interested in it. Exactly.
When things are really, really hard, you learn a lot about people. And David, like I say, the positivity, it's people like that, when things are looking really, really grim, steer people through and keep things going. And and him, along with the other trust directors at the time and all the people involved and all the other fans and the volunteers, really kept that club going. And I'm so glad that he saw Wycombe Wanderers get to the Championship, albeit I don't think he was at the playoff games, but he was around to see that season in the Championship, because it was a milestone in the club's history, and he would have seen it come right the way through from the non-league days right the way through, and played a huge part especially under Trust ownership when getting players in. I know it was a big help to Gareth and bringing players to the club, and it's been amazing to see the players on social media sort of talking about David in such warm ways as well, because of the part that he played in bringing them to the club. And not only that, also after they left the club, always keeping in touch, always asking how they were, and that was the mark of the man, really.
And I mean, that's really interesting, because I know we've spoken before about the remarkable number of players who then come back to Wycombe Wanderers. So that just gives you an idea as to, what goes on actually when players leave, and why possibly they then think, right, actually, I'm going to come back.
Yeah, Wycombe Wanderers is I still see it as a non-league club, and I say that in the nicest way, because it's got that family appeal to it. It's got that spirit to it. Once you pulled on the quarters, you're one of us. John D. Taylor and Hutch do an amazing job with the Ex-Players Association as well, to keep them all connected and keep people tied to Wycombe Wanderers. And when the players cross the white line for Wycombe Wanderers, there is that bond all of a sudden, and that's why so many of those players are still connected to the club to this day.
And then another sad piece of news, the Ex-Players Association also then reporting the sudden and unexpected death of former goalkeeping legend Gary Lester, who played 521 games for Wycombe Wanderers. Yeah,
this is a really sad couple of days for the club. Gary was the second goalkeeper in the club's history. I think just behind John Maskell, I think he made the most appearances as a goalkeeper. And Wycombe have had some really good servants down the years in between the sticks. And I remember Gary Lester really, really well. My first ever game was a fan back in 1987. Gary was in goal, he was a fantastic keeper for the Blues. And during the 80s, it was a really good period for the club in their non-league heyday as well. And I remember him playing for Marlow against Tottenham at White Hart Lane in the FA Cup. And a sudden passing, and by today's standards, no age either. So again, to echo the sentiments of earlier, thoughts to his family and friends as well, because, that's a tough one to take.
Yeah, really, really sad. And I'm sure that the club will be marking both in the way that they do. And that's one of the wonderful things about Wycombe Wanderers, is that actually they are so good at paying tribute. And I'm sure they will be doing that. Yeah,
exactly that. I think, it's part of the Ex-Players Association. It's about keeping that spirit together, and and remembering the contribution that these people have made to the club, because they may no longer be with us, but their vibrations will continue now when whatever the club does in the future, because they're part of the DNA, they're part of the blueprint of the whole thing.
So true. So the reason really for getting you on this week, and I promise it's not because there wasn't a game on Saturday or anything like that, we've already spoken to a couple of media people on the Wycombe Wanderers show, and I thought I really wanted to get you on because everybody now knows you as the Wycombe Wanderers commentator, but just really how you ended up in that position of behind the microphone on match day. You do a fantastic job, and I would say this to anyone. I'm not just saying it because you're there, but what led you to actually be sitting there and commentating on football?
It was a complete and utter accident. It was something that I didn't see coming. It wasn't something I was looking to get into, which will sound really galling for people who are listening to this, thinking I really want to be a football commentator. How do I do it? I remember I was living in Wycombe at the time. I've been a Wycombe fan since I was a young boy, and so I was a keen fan of the club. And I remember I'd broken up with my then partner, my girlfriend, and we've been together for quite a long time. So I had a bit more time on my hands, and like I said earlier on about the family nature of Wycombe Wanderers, you go back to what you know. I was back around the club quite a lot, and as a fan, and I had a bit of time on my hands as well with work, and I was working. I swapped the job. I was working in the music industry. And what with downloads and everything else, it was a tough time. And so I lost my job as well. So it was a big moment of change in my life. And so I ended up getting a new job working for an organisation that was part of the Foreign Office, but in their arts department. And I actually hated it because it was just for the civil servants, and I found it really boring. And but I was working on a radio project, which was really exciting. But I didn't know anything about radio, so I persuaded them to let me have a day off a week to learn about radio, and I did that at Wycombe Hospital Radio. I volunteered on a Monday, and in return they would show me how to to man a radio desk and get involved in some broadcasts and whatever. And lo and behold, after about a month of doing some music shows, after passing my audition, which took quite some time, we had to go to the monthly meeting of the hospital radio station, which was pretty interesting in itself. And this guy called Keith stood up and was all sort of doom and gloom because he'd lost a couple of his university students who had been working over the summer, and he didn't have enough people to man the studio for this weekend's commentary at Adams Park. And I had no idea that this was happening. And then I was like, well, I love football, I'll happily help out. So I spent about a month or so in the studio, sort of, putting the faders up for the guys down at Adams Park to do the commentary for the patients in the hospital. And after a couple of months, I got to go behind the microphone, and it was one of those moments, people talk about light bulb moments or whatever. I remember getting behind the mic and just thinking, wow, this is great. I mean, I love talking, and I love football, and I love Wycombe Wanderers. So the three things came together all at one time, and I was like, wow, this is brilliant. And because Wycombe is, as I say, a small family club, hospital radio got the same access as 5 Live reporters and all the other people there. And, it was a completely new world to me. I didn't have a clue what was going on, who anybody was. But it was just a lovely platform to learn. So I did all of that. I did hospital radio for the rest of that season, which was about 3 or 4 months. And we rotated a couple of games on at the game, one in the studio. So I ended up doing about 10 or 15 games. And then somehow, I don't know what happened, but BBC Three Counties had stopped sending a reporter at the end of that season. And people on the gas room, the Wycombe Wanderers message board, were complaining about the lack of coverage. So I emailed BBC Three Counties saying, look, I'm a volunteer on the community station. And by that point, I'd made a little recording of myself. I sent them a clip and said, I'm at games anyway doing this for free. If you need some help, I'll be happy to help out. And then they gave me a trial game on a Tuesday night against Rotherham. Steve Evans was the manager. They drew 2-2. It was a decent game to report on, and I passed that one. And I think there was about 10 games left at the end of the season, and they said, right, you can do the rest of the season, but we ain't going to pay you. And then so I did that, and then over the summer they took me on as a freelancer, and that was that. And so clearly got into it by accident, if I'm honest, Bob.
Yeah, I mean, and you say that possibly it's galling to listen to, but actually I see you as being a bit of a Chris Farino that turns up for just really to make up the numbers, not really expecting anything, and the next thing he's actually being given a contract. And to me, it's really inspiring what you've said, because actually, even if you are listening to this and this is what you want to do, you want to become a football commentator, you want to get into radio, the routes in, there are so many. It's not that actually you necessarily say have to go to university, that you've got to have lots of experience. Some of us, and I'm similar, just happen to actually fall into it.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, Bob. There's countless courses out there. You want to go and do broadcast journalism, you can do all of that. And, these things cost money and time, obviously. I had none of that. It was just, I was literally off the terrace, and so that was it. But, hospital radio was brilliant because, I don't think that many people were listening, to be honest. But there was one really important listener, which was me, because at the end of it, I'd get a mini disc at the end of the game. I'd pop back to the hospital and they'd give me a mini disc of me doing a commentary, and I'd listen back to it on the way home, and I'd listen back to it, and it was really hard at the start, and I was thinking, I sound terrible, or I say that word so many times, and it gave me the platform to practice in a live situation, and the discipline came from having to listen back to myself and improve what it sounded like, week on, and there's no replication for that. There's no university that will teach you that. You've just got to go and do it, and you've got to put the hours in. So that was it. But yeah, I mean, if you go and do these courses and whatever, that's all great. But in this day and age, someone came up to me in the bar the other day and said, "How do I get into doing what you're doing?" And I was like, "Watch games, watch them on TV, go live and whatever. And when the ball goes into the final third, just start commentating on your phone. Just start recording into the voice memo thing on your phone, and commentate on goals. Make a little show reel. Get better at it. Listen back to it. It's all there really. The tools are all out there now if you want to do it, and it's just practice and airtime really."
Yeah, I think one of the things that's really important that you've said there is the listen back to it bit, and that's the hardest bit, actually, is listening back to yourself, because as you say, you do cringe and you do think, goodness me, I say that word too much or I sound really silly, but that's the way that you learn, and if you can put yourself through that pain barrier, then actually that's the way that you get better.
Yeah, exactly that, and, it took a bit of discipline to do it, but, I'd realised as well for years, I've been listening to the radio. I remember, when I was a kid, like football commentaries on radio too.
Yeah,
and 5 Live.
Yeah.
And I've been listening to all this stuff for so long, and it happened. And so I knew what a good commentary sounded like, but I didn't really know, because I'd just been listening to it, and they make it sound so effortless. So I knew what it sounded like. So for years, I've been sort of conditioning myself without realising it. And then all of a sudden, I'm sat in the press box at Wycombe, and these people are dropping in and out. You've got I remember bumping into John Murray when Villa came down. He's like the chief football reporter at 5 Live, and I remember speaking to him in the week. He rang me to do his research on Wycombe Wanderers, and in turn, I was able to pick his brains and say, what do I need to do? Because at that time, I was just a freelancer, worked with a normal job in a week and everything else. And so he was really key for me, because he told me that, it'd be great to get a journalism diploma or something like that, just to kind of give me some grounding in media law, and that would be a way of sort of progressing. And that's exactly what I did. And there's a guy called Dave King, who used to be the editor of the Buxbury Press, who left that position and moved into education in journalism, and he ended up being my tutor. And I did my journalism diploma at Wembley Stadium. They used the corporate boxes during the week when they were empty as classrooms.
That must have been quite a cool place to go and study.
It was brilliant, because it was empty every day, and you'd go and do this stuff. And I was in there every day of the week for 5 months, doing all my classes and my exams, all done at the stadium. And then, of course, roll back the clock to 2020. I'll go and do a game there with Wycombe Wanderers. And I'm probably the only commentator who went there who knew exactly what it was like when it was empty, because I've been there so many days when it was empty. So even that paid me in good stead as well. But yeah, so all these sort of life-changing moments I can think about, they all happened at Adams Park, and I suppose once you get into that position, you've just got to make the most of it and make sure you say hello to everybody and help people out where you can, and always be nice to everyone. It's a small world.
Yeah, very true. I think the other important thing that you've said, and I've seen you in action at Adams Park as well, is that actually these days you've got all the kit. I mean, if we go back to when you and I were kids, if you wanted to do anything about radio, you had to have so much kit that you would be taking, say, to a game. These days you've got it all on your phone, and I see your interviews with Gareth, and you do that all just on a phone. There's not even a microphone. Yeah,
it's incredible, really, and I've got an app on my phone, and even if you just use your voice memo app, you've got it. I've got an app on my phone that connects to the newsroom for BBC Three Counties and 5 Live, and I can send all my interviews straight into the desk of whoever's presenting on whatever show, which is phenomenal. But yeah, everything is there, and it means that I can be somewhere and something happens, and I can just whip my phone out and start talking to people, which is brilliant. And pre-pandemic, Gareth used to come up to the radio point, and we'd stick him on the headphones of the sunrise, and we'd do it live that way. But now it's pitch side and following the Coivd protocols and everything else. But yeah, even if you just want to do your own pre-match interviews with people after games, go and interview your best mate in a bar and say, what do you make of the game today? What about the subs? All this stuff. Ask the questions and get better at it, because interviewing is the same. The more you do it, the better you get at it.
Yeah. So true. So when you look back at the games that you've commentated on, which ones really stick out for you?
Torquay away, when Wycombe, was.
Yeah, of course.
We all know the implications.
Exactly. I think all you have to say is Torquay, and we all know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I think that was a game that sort of made me sort of better known amongst the Wycombe fan base, because there was over 1,000 Wycombe fans there that day that made the long journey, and I've always said it was like going to a funeral. It was like going to see the end of Wycombe Wanderers Football League era, or certainly up to that point, and because no one really gave us a chance, and so it did feel like we were going to cover quite a sad event, and then as history has told us, it was one of the best days in the club's history. But Wycombe were winning. It was like a procession. They were 3-0 up in the second half, and Three Counties said, "Look, we're going to stop commentating on this game because no one this result is done, we're all worried about what's going on at the Memorial Stadium up in Bristol. So they stuck me in a set of headphones, and I had the commentary of BBC Bristol in my ears. And they sent me out into the terrace to feed back into our live programme, saying, what's it like on the terrace? And of course, the atmosphere was absolutely incredible. You could cut the air with a knife in there. And then I soon realised, I was like, hold on a minute, if Bristol Rovers score, Wycombe are down, regardless of what's going on here. And I'm going to have to tell everybody because, I've got this going on live in my headset. Everyone else was looking at their phones and whatever, but I was like, well, I'm going to be the first to know about this. So I'm in there, and I remember there's about 20 minutes of that game to go, which felt like about 15 hours. And then I always remember the commentator saying, right, the fourth official was bored us 5 minutes. And Anita, who used to be the photographer for the Bucks Press, a wonderful lady, took a great photograph of me in the front of the stand in the paddock. And I'm holding my hand up with my, with 5 fingers, my 4 fingers and my thumb up, and I'm saying, there's 5 minutes to go. And it really captured the moment perfectly. There's a fan in the background, he's got his head in his hands, you can see the pensive nature of everybody's face. And that 5 minutes, I was just absolutely terrified that Bristol Rovers was going to score, because I'm going to how the hell am I going to tell everybody? What am I going to say? Fortunately, they didn't. They hit the bar, I think, twice in that 5 minutes. But then I'll never, ever forget the roar when the whistle went at the Memorial Stadium. And I was just put my arm up and went, it's done. And people were then getting the stuff on their phones as well and all the other stuff. And that roar was just guttural. It was just unbelievable. And I can hear it now, talking about it. And, yeah, phenomenal. I mean, that game was right up there. Tottenham away at the old White Hart Lane.
Yeah, of course.
Just
yeah.
the most magical day for me. All my family originally from Tottenham were all Tottenham fans. And never in my wildest dreams did I ever think that Wycombe would play Tottenham in a competitive game. Especially when I was a young boy when I was going to Lokes Park, and if someone had told me, oh yeah, you'll be going toe-to-toe with Tottenham, I'd have laughed at them, even though I was really young. So to go there and to commentate at the old White Hart Lane before they knocked it down was just amazing. And it was the perfect day, bar Sonny's late goal, because had it been a 3-3 draw, we would have got the replay they deserved. But I remember being interviewed before the game, and they were saying, well, you can't lose today. And I was like, well, I can. If we can get embarrassed like 8-0, then that's not good. I just want them to really give a good account of themselves. And boy, did they. What a game that was. And to commentate on that was just unreal, absolutely unreal. And, my dad and my brother were there as well, which was great for them. And, my dad had been at White Hart Lane when Tottenham won the double in the 60s. So, yeah, it was just brilliant. It was just almost the perfect day. And then Wembley, I've done 2 Wembleys, the Southend game and then the Oxford game. The Oxford game was just surreal on every level because, we could go into the Championship, which in itself, in normal circumstances, was surreal. But to do it in an empty stadium, I think there were 90 people there that night, and absolutely overjoyed to be able to get in and privileged to do it. And to be alongside Beanie for that game was just great. And, unbelievable. So, yeah, I've always said the word privileged, really, because to do any game, really, is just a privilege. But those games especially were just phenomenal.
Yeah, and again, this is why you're such a good commentator, because you've said all of those things, and and the hairs on the back of my neck are pretty much standing up about all of them, because you can picture it. You're there as you're saying those words. You're there at Torquay, you're there at White Hart Lane, and you're there again at Wembley. Yeah,
that's just and someone, I can't remember who it was. Someone sent me an email. With my commentary, like they typed out the words to certain moments that were really special to them in Wycombe Wanderers history that I'd commentated on, and they sent me an email with what I'd said at the time, and I couldn't believe it. I was like, wow, and they were just saying, well, yeah, this was great. You summed up these moments perfectly, and I was like, well, you never think about stuff like this. It's live. You can't prepare it. I don't prepare anything. And you just say it as it is, and you just do it. And I don't know where the words come from, but and I was completely blown away by that. And then I was just thinking, well, yeah, these are moments of history, I guess. And I don't know. I just make sure I try not to muck it up, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that I ever worry about, it's exactly the same with Gareth, is that actually one day somebody might come along and poach you and you might go somewhere else.
I don't know about that, but I think, I got into this game pretty late on in my life. I was sort of late 30s, and, there's some great young commentators out there doing brilliant things, and, I look back and I'm very lucky that hospital radio was brilliant when I was there, because we had Joe Shannon, who is a fantastic commentator for TalkSport and freelance. He pops up all over the place, the Sky Red Button, and does all sorts. He's a phenomenal commentator. And Aaron Paul, who is now doing the Football League podcast for 5 Live and a fantastic 5 Live reporter. And, and I remember being in hospital radio with those guys thinking, wow, this is great. And thinking all hospital radios were like that. But they weren't, were they? But
no, that's very true.
But I can't see myself going anywhere really. But like I say, every match day is a privilege. You think, I've got to go to some amazing games, amazing stadiums, and commentate on a team that I love. So, what's better than that?
Wycombe Wanderers commentator Phil Catchpole, and remember that you can get Phil's Ringing the Blues podcast on all good podcast providers, just as you can get the Wycombe Wanderers Show as well. Still to come on this week's show, we will be hearing next from former winger Danny Senda, and we'll also be catching up at the end of the show with Wycombe boss Gareth Ainsworth.
Online, on Radio Player, and on 106.6 FM. This is Wycombe Sound.
It's the Wycombe Wanderers Show on Wycombe Sound. Bob Johnson with you. No Colin this week, but he will be back next week. Time now for our ex-players interview this week, where I caught up with former winger Danny Senda. Although I did say to Danny that whilst I think we all think of him as a winger, he did play in quite a lot of different positions during his time at Adams Park.
When I first joined the club from Southampton, I joined as a right winger. But then, for whatever reason, the club decided to put me up front. That's where I made my debut under Laurie up front, and I enjoyed it up there. But I mean, back then, if you remember, the centre halves and most of the teams that we played against, every team was just so physical. It was so difficult for me up there. And then by circumstance, I found myself going to right back and really enjoyed it. I took to the role. Defensively, probably wasn't the best defender. Maybe a little bit before my time in terms of how fullbacks attacked. But I think probably out of all the positions that I got put in, right back was probably my most favourite position.
Yeah, and I think again that's definitely that's where I can see you in the Wycombe team down there. But you say that you weren't a great defender, but you more than made up for that then going forward, because you gave us another option with regards to then crossing the ball in.
Yeah, and I think that's probably why I was put to various different positions. I mean, Tony Adams came in and I somehow found myself in central midfield, and I don't know whether that was just again because of my output that I was able to run. That he wanted me to go in there. And then John Gorman came back in and decided he wanted to put me back to right back. And I ended up having a really good relationship with Kevin Betsy. I think we complemented each other really well. I mean, as you say, it was almost like playing two wingers at times with the way that we played. We had some great times under John.
And it was such exciting football to watch as well. And I think, I think any fan probably wants their team to be all attacking. And particularly, as you say, it was like having two wingers on the same side. And that's why it was so good to watch.
Yeah, it was so good to play in as well. I mean, particularly under John Gorman, who I referred to as the gaffer. He used to say to me, if you're not going to get forward and you're not going to attack, then I might as well play somebody else, because you're not in the team to defend. You're in the team to attack. And that team was... Yeah, I mean, I know Wycombe have gone on to do some wonderful things under Gaz, but I'm not sure there's been a team since that team that has entertained as much. We played in some games. I think there was a game against Macclesfield that ended 5-4, and that was typical of John's teams. That it was all out entertainment, it was all out excitement. Really, really good teams to play, and we had some wonderful players in that group as well.
It's really interesting as well as a fan to hear a player then saying that actually that's what they enjoy as well. That you enjoy what we enjoy as fans is that actually the more entertaining the side, the better. Whereas presumably if you're in a side where you are just passing it around the back and you're playing 5 in defence, it's not quite as much fun.
No, it was a balance really, because it's really strange. So obviously starting with Laurie Sanchez, and Laurie was probably part of his era in the crazy gang. It was we were physical at the front end of the pitch with Andy Rammell, Sean Devine, and these types of players. We had physical players in the back line with Jamie Bates, Paul McCarthy, and he was more about playing in the final third, about imposing our physicality in the final third. So maybe for someone of how I played, it wasn't overly exciting to be involved in. I think at times it wasn't over exciting for the fans, but there's an argument there. Of course, Laurie took us to the FA Cup semi-final, so there was something in that. But yeah, to see the fans enjoying how we played, and every single game you were looking forward to it, because you just never knew what you were going to get other than goals, and to be entertained. So it was, as I say, it was a lovely team to be a part of.
You mentioned the FA Cup semi-final run. For you, that must have been a very double-edged thing, because you played in a couple of games against Millwall before you were then injured. What was it like then to see the team get all the way to Villa Park and take on Liverpool?
It's incredible, really. I know, injury unfortunately hampered my campaign in the FA Cup, but it was unbelievable how we just kept winning. We got Wimbledon. We thought, okay, this is going to be a difficult time. We managed to get the draw and take them back there, and eventually beat them on penalties. Then you get to Leicester and you think, okay, is this it? Because Leicester were flying at the time in the Premier League, and you think, okay, is this our one last shot, or one big day in the FA Cup? And then Essendon pops up with a wonderful header that he did, and then all of a sudden, you find yourself in an FA Cup semi-final against one of the biggest clubs in the world at Villa Park. We really couldn't believe it, but we just, every single time we went into these cup games, there was a real belief about the group, real belief that we could progress. So to get to the semi-final, and not only get to the semi-final, I think when the draw was made, we all thought, oh goodness, this could be a long afternoon for us. But actually, we were more than a match for Liverpool. And to only have Liverpool edges 2-1, I think was credit to everyone involved and credit to the football club. It was a wonderful, wonderful day out for everyone involved, and I'm so pleased that everyone looks back at it so fondly.
And I think the fact again that we were able to score a goal against them, and as you say, and competed in the whole game.
Yeah, throughout we did. You remember back to the Holt end being, in the light and dark blue quarters in the Holt end. It was an incredible spectacle, to have so many fans travel up there and support us, and not even just on the game day. The build up to it was just, you'd walk through the town centre and you'd be getting stopped. I remember I went into the town one day just to do a bit of shopping, and I got mobbed. I had to have someone to guide me out. And back then it was, no one really knew who you were unless you were a Wycombe fan. But in the build up to that FA Cup run, it was massive, and so good for the town. Really, I think it really put us on the map.
Yeah, and it's so heartwarming to hear you talk about that time as well. And it just makes you realise as well what a fantastic competition the FA Cup is. That actually a little team like Wycombe Wanderers, and goodness me, we were a small team back then. I know that we've gone on to great things with regards to the Championship and whatever. But then the thought of us playing in an FA Cup semi-final was just seemed ridiculous. And the fact that actually that you guys did it, and as you say, you beat Wolves, you beat Wimbledon, you beat Leicester, and went on and almost got a draw against Liverpool, which then would have gone to penalties. It's just, you look back at it now, it's just amazing.
Yeah, it's truly unbelievable what we've done. But then I look at, as you say, what the guys are doing now and are pushing again to get into the Championship. I like to think that we were just one brick towards helping the club be where it is today. The guys that played under Martin O'Neill as well gave us the opportunity to perform in the Football League. And I, a bit of me believes that we were a small part of getting the club to where it is today. I know there was a few lean years before the new ownership came in and has done a wonderful job of pushing the football club forward. But yeah, I think it's all building towards where the club is now. It finds itself in a really strong position in League One, and going to have to be careful because I'm at Cheltenham now, but I do hope that the club has the opportunity to go back to the Championship and, and really compete and maybe spend another season in it.
We mentioned about the number of managers that you played under, or certainly were in the squad under. So John Gregory, Neil Smiley, Laurie Sanchez, Tony Adams and John Gorman. Which, just when you say those names, such a different mix. What was it like playing under each of them, and did they very much bring their own personalities into the dressing room?
They did, and it was, at the time when you look back on it and you see clubs now with certain identities, and they identify coaches, managers for that club identity. And I think at the time where Wycombe were in a bit of a transitional period, coming up under Martin and establishing themselves as a Football League club. And in that period, lots of, if you look at Laurie, was a Premier League player, a name, got his own FA Cup history as well. Smiley, again, another one, had a wonderful playing career. And they all were given the opportunity, to dip their toe in as managers, similar to Martin. And as you say, they were all different styles. Neil wanted to play a little bit more than Laurie. Still very physical, still wanted the physical element of the game to be a part of it. He was really good for me because he was at the club when I first arrived from Southampton, and he talked to me a lot about being patient and waiting my time, and that my chance would come. And then eventually my chance did come under Laurie when I was 17. And again, very physical, very direct team, as I said before. Then closely followed by Tony Adams, and Tony went in a slightly different direction. He first came in, and I think originally he wanted to play, but was a little bit shocked at the level, having spent majority of his career at the top flight. So he came in, and he unfortunately, in my view, set about dismantling a team which I felt had some very, very good individuals like sort of Darren Curry, Jermaine Sporran, Danny Bullman, Michael Simpson, Sean Devine. The list was endless, I felt, of really good players, but Tony saw it a different way. I think he wanted to go a little bit younger, play a little bit more football. And so he went down the loan route. And listen, he went and got some wonderful players, and Luke Moore and Taylor and Williamson and Tyson. They were all very good young players, but it was a different style. And I think Tony quickly worked out that he would have to become adaptable, managing at League One and League Two. And then John came back, and John was the polar opposite to all of them, really. John was total football. He absolutely loved it. He loved working with all types of players, young, old, and he managed to get a real balance in that squad of a mixture of experience. Then the middle group with myself, Roger Johnson, and then the younger ones in like a young Russell Martin. And we had a real good balance. One, obviously that season, didn't turn out as happy as we would have liked it before, for certain reasons that went on in that season. It's a real eclectic different sorts of managers that I've played under. All I've taken parts of with me into my coaching career now. I'm really grateful to have played for all of them, if I'm being honest, because as I say, I had 8 wonderful, wonderful years at Wycombe.
I think as well, particularly with John Gorman, we all look back on that time with a little bit of regret, because you think that actually he could have been one of the real classic Wycombe Wanderers managers, along with Martin, along with Gareth Ainsworth, but for circumstances and for certain tragic events.
Yeah, exactly. And probably a little bias from me, but Gareth and Martin have obviously had huge successes with promotions and cup runs. But I do put John in that bracket because, most people that I speak to when I talk about the Wycombe days, John's name comes up. We had a real affinity with the club. As I say, his team was, okay, we didn't go on and get the success that that group perhaps should have and could have got. But I do think it had its own uniqueness about it, which everyone, looks back with fond memories on. And there's been managers, that have gone past in the years that maybe we haven't spoken about as much, but John for me does and should be held in high regard as much as the other ones that have got success for the football club. As I say, I just can't speak highly enough of the good times. He's such a good man, John, and he really had Wycombe at his heart. I know he's been back in recent weeks to the club, but for me, he's one of the Wycombe great managers.
Yeah, indeed. And it was lovely to see him when he came back to Adams Park as well. It was, really, really heartwarming moment. So after Wycombe then, you went to Millwall, where you became a very, very big fan favourite. What was the difference between, say, playing for Wycombe and then going somewhere, and I know it's got a reputation and it's probably not like that the whole time, but a hard club like Millwall?
Very different. A big eye-opener. Very, very early on to playing at the Den and playing at Adams Park, are two very different places. Wycombe is a lovely family club, and you have to do a lot wrong for the fans to not be pleased with you. At Millwall, there is a very, very high expectation for minimum of work rate, of effort, and maybe perhaps that's why things worked out for me so well at that football club, because if you give them that as a bare minimum, they will love you. But on the other side to it, it is as you say, it's a very hard and unforgiving place at times. But I absolutely loved it. I instantly clicked with the fan base. I completely clicked with the DNA of the football club, and it was a wonderful time there for me. Other than obviously the injuries that ended up winding my career up, but some really good memories. Kenny Jackett came in. I again played under a number of managers, but Kenny came in and turned things around, and we had 2 playoff finals with Kenny eventually getting back to the Championship. And so yeah, a really good time for me there. But 2 very different football clubs in their approach and their expectations, but 2 clubs that I hold really dearly to my heart, if I'm being honest.
So you're at Charlton now. What is the attitude, I suppose, of those who don't know very much about Wycombe? What do they see at Wycombe, and what do they think particularly about our manager?
I think, at the minute throughout football, there is a lot of admiration for what Gaz and Dobbo are doing at Wycombe. When Gaz first took over, 10 years back now? He had very little to work with. But they seem to have found a way. And if I talk about an identity, Wycombe not really having one. When I first joined the football club after Martin, Gaz has 100% created that. I went into the training ground a few years back, and the togetherness in that training ground is like no other. It is incredible. And it may sound a little bit cliche and a little bit corny, but they are almost a band of brothers. It is so tight. And that for me is Wycombe's identity now, the togetherness that Gareth has brought, not just with the team, but you go back. I've still got family that live in the area, and you go back and he seems to have knitted the whole town together, and everyone seems to be behind the football club, and that's hugely down to him and what Dobbo have done for the club. So there's a lot of admiration from other clubs, as included. We're all trying to create that identity, that longevity that Gaz has got. But you look at Wycombe now, and they are, they're a real force in League One now. For me, they're one of the best teams that I've certainly seen in the division, and I'd be surprised if they don't go up.
It's really interesting to hear you say as well, just to say about the band of brothers and whatever, because I think because Gaz has been with us for such a long time, actually there's some Wycombe fans now who don't necessarily appreciate that and don't know any different. So it's really interesting to hear you say that actually, it is pretty unique in football what we've got here in Wycombe.
It's incredibly unique. And listen, Gaz has had a hard time maybe for the way that his teams have played. I know they're playing slightly different now, but I think the argument for that is, again, he's had to find a way with, as I say, before the new ownership came in, of making a team compete. It wasn't, Wycombe weren't that far off of going out of the division. So he had to find a way, and he had to get a group of individuals together that would help him achieve success, stabilise the football club first and foremost, and he's more than done that. And then push the club forward. And I say, you go back to John Gorman, I think sometimes you can get a little bit spoiled and you want everything. You want the wins and you want the exciting brand of football, but that's not always the case. And in Gaz's case, he's created a really tight-knit group who, if you're going to play against a Wycombe team, it is going to be an incredibly difficult game, home and away. And they have found a real formula of winning football matches. So, I think what he has done, I can't stress it enough, and what he is currently doing with that team is nothing short of incredible.
Well, it's been absolutely brilliant catching up with you, Danny. Thank you so much. When you look back on your time at Adams Park, just give us a couple of the highlights, a couple of the memories that come back to you.
Well, I think firstly how the fans have always been warm with me. They've always, I go back to the area, and everyone is so welcome. When I go back to the stadium, I instantly feel at home, because that's what it is. Wycombe, it's my home. All the other clubs that I've played for, I've had some really, really good times, create some really good memories. But, when I go back to watch a Wycombe game, it is for me going home. I've got lifelong friends, in the likes of Steve Brown, Darren Curry, Roger Johnson, Keith Ryan. I go back and there's familiar faces. So for me, the best way I can describe Wycombe is home, and it'll always be that way for me. It's a special, special place, which, I grew up, not just as a footballer, as a young man. And the club has got, a lot to do with all the happy memories that I had as a young man growing up. So, yeah, a very special place for me.
Thanks as always to JDT and the Ex-Players Association for helping us out with the ex-players interviews here on the Wycombe Wanderers Show. And many thanks to Danny Senda as well for taking time to speak to us. Still to come on tonight's Wycombe Wanderers Show, we will be catching up with Gareth Ainsworth. He was, of course, going to be looking forward to the game against Cambridge United, but as that's not happening, he's now turning his attention to the clash on the 29th of December against Ipswich Town.
Online, on Radio Player, and on 106.6 FM. This is Wycombe Sound.
It's the Wycombe Wanderers Show on our Wycombe Sound. Just Bob with you this week. Colin will be back next week. And so, this morning I spoke to Gareth Ainsworth. Obviously, we couldn't then be discussing the Boxing Day clash against Cambridge United, but I asked him whether or not his squad had been similarly affected by Covid.
I'm not going to disclose medical information, but we were ready to play the game. So, obviously, we gutted the games off. I think every club's going to have one or two. But I'll have to say that either we've been very fortunate or Keaton and his medical team have done a fantastic job, because we seem to be keeping a lid on things really well here, and very minimal on cases. So yeah, we without giving out absolute detail, which is obviously a medical confidentiality thing, we're ready. We're ready to play the game, and I'm a little bit gutted it is off, because we don't want a fixture backlog, but also I totally respect the pandemic and the cases that are flying around the country, and just wish everyone a quick recovery from everyone, not just football but everyone. Hopefully this variant isn't as severe as first thought, and we can get normal pretty soon.
Do you think the game should be going ahead at the moment when it's such a strange situation? No, my opinion on that is I'll keep to myself, but I totally respect, if people are ill and people can't field teams, and the whole idea of isolation and keeping apart and not spreading this is really important. If people have got vulnerable, if they live with vulnerable people, or I'm very fortunate. My family's quite young, quite healthy, but people will have conditions in their families. People will live with grandparents or have young children, and you've got to respect that. We're still in Coivd territory, and Coivd has killed so many people. So I think if definitely there's legitimate reasons to call the games off, then they need to be called off. I just hope that we can get back to some normality, because I'd hate to go through what we went through 2 years ago with the season being cut short or no fans last season. That wasn't football for me. So hopefully all these measures are in place so we can keep going and we can keep fans coming into the stadiums. That's really important for me, and I'm sure everyone else in football. It's it's the one positive is for 32 years I've never had a Boxing Day off. So I'll make the most of this one, believe me. What's Christmas like in the Ainsworth house?
Yeah, Christmas is great. I'm very family orientated, as people know. I I put football unbelievably high on my priority list, but nothing gets above family, and that's always important to me. We've only been in on Christmas Day a couple of times in my tenure, and that's because we were on away trip, so we had to travel. I remember one night we were in a hotel in Plymouth on Christmas Day night, and nobody wanted to be there. Not even the staff at Plymouth wanted to be there, so that was horrible. So I try and give Christmas Day off when I can. I believe that what I'll get in return on Boxing Day, or the months after that, because the boys know I've given them that day with their families. I've given them that moment, and so Christmas is incredibly important to me as well. It's a special time. It's a family time. It's a giving time, and we try and do that year round at Wycombe. Especially myself, I love giving, and Christmas is that moment when you just have that one day where everyone can be together, and you realise really what's important in life, and some things aren't everything, but family definitely is, and health definitely is as well. So we've got to have a real careful Christmas, but again, we're going to be celebrating together. The kids love it. My oldest Scarlett, she's coming over, which is brilliant, and even mum and dad, hopefully we can spend some time with. But again, everyone will be tested. We're lucky that we test every day at the club, and the kids test with their schools. We've got some tests from schools, so we can keep testing. And fingers crossed and touch wood, everyone's staying COVID free, and hopefully that'll go right through to Christmas Day.
Fantastic. And is there a point in Christmas Day where you start singing, where you start performing a little bit?
Of course there is. Yeah, I have a daughter who's she's great. She's just done her grade 7 piano, and she's learning all these Christmas songs, and she's a singer. So I think the genes are running strong through the family there, from my mum to me to my daughter, and if we don't get up and do a duet at some stage, then something's gone wrong on Christmas Day. So ever the performer, but definitely it's about everyone enjoying themselves. The only thing I don't do is indulge too much on the drink, on the alcohol, because it's always been the Boxing Day. Get your head right, get your head in the game, and believe me, I'm Christmas Day night, you start thinking about the next games. I'm sure every family goes through this, where you get to about 7 or 8 o'clock and Christmas Day is almost done, and you're thinking, right, what's next? Some people go online for the sales. Some people, I think one of the biggest internet surges is late on Christmas Day, isn't it? So it's probably a lot of football managers on Y-Scout looking at the opposition for the next day. So it's a great day. But performing will be on the cards without a doubt. Games, family games, we're no different to any other family, and I think indulging in that sort of stuff keeps you healthy and keeps everything right. But really, really important time, Christmas. I want everyone to have a great Christmas. All the fans, all the football people, and everyone and who's been affected by this crazy couple of years. Have a fantastic Christmas, and we will be having Boxing Day off. I'm sure I'll be watching football, but there definitely won't be the brain ticking over as it usually does. That'll be all focusing on Monday, Tuesday, and then Ipswich on Wednesday.
Yeah, I mean that'll come round quite quickly, and you wouldn't have thought it, given what happened at Adams Park back in November. But Ipswich now quite a different proposition to the team that we faced that night. Yeah,
they've been real up and down. Real roller coaster of a team this season. They've really started sluggishly. They made some huge signings in the summer and really didn't gel. Paul Cook's a good manager, but he couldn't get them to gel. And I think the expectation and the money that was spent there's pressure on them. And then out of the blue, Kieran McKenna gets appointed, and people are probably wondering who is this guy, and once you're in football, you do know who these people are. But again, it was a bit of a left field one as well. But he's highly rated by some top managers in the game. So you much like MK Dons and Swindon now has been gone, and Manning, that they've appointed from a youth setup or a development sort of setup, and I think that's something now in football we're looking at, that these coaches and these managers don't necessarily have to have played at the top level or played at any level really. I know some have and some have played at some level, but it's all about the knowledge now and the way that they coach players. I think that head coach is becoming a big name now. Some clubs have CEOs and directors of football who take on all the scouting and the contracts and the recruitment, and the coach is just coming to purely coach the team. You know, I'm glad to say here I'm a manager and I'll manage everything, you know, all the things I aforementioned there. But the modern game now, there's so many positions at clubs that I think they're looking down the coach route now of get these boys gelled, get them coached, and as you say, they're a different proposition, but we don't know what proposition they are, because I was going to Gillingham on Boxing Day, believe me, but that's been called off. So Ipswich are unknown to us. We've got to prepare for a dangerous proposition, really, because we don't know what's coming. It's tough, you know. Kieran's never managed in the Football League, so what does he do? And we've got to be on our best sort of adaptability, really, to see what comes, but also work on what we're good at, and I'll be doing that over the days after Christmas.
Obviously, it's been quite a sad couple of days at the club. We lost goalkeeping legend Gary Lester and also David Robertson as well.
Do you know what? It's been a real tough year again, losing people. Gary, obviously, fantastic keeper, and sorely missed, and some of the ex-players I'm sure were very close to him, and again, hopefully his family and friends will be at peace with him resting. But the big one for me is David Robertson. That was the one message I got which stopped me in my tracks. I'm not saying nobody else stops in my tracks, but David was a real close friend. He was director of football, appointed by Don Woodward when the trust came in, and really, when I got the job, David played a huge part in supporting. The club was in chaos, really was, but not once did David Robertson ever lose his cool or lose his positivity. You know, he was new to the job, just as I was, and it was a fantastic time. You know, we had some laughs, we had some serious moments, but he played a huge part in the start of this managerial tenure of mine, and I am absolutely devastated. Honestly, I really am. I think David was a top fella, and there's not one bone in his body that would want harm or hurt or badness on anybody. He was such a great guy and such a great person that he will be remembered by me for all those positive things and all that positivity and togetherness he brought to Wycombe Wanderers. You know, some real tough times, like I say, but we got through it, and I'll never forget David Robertson. He was a top guy. He'll be sorely missed. My thoughts go out to his family, obviously Phil, his son, and all his friends and all members of the trust, because I'm sure he'll be sorely missed. But just from me, a personal message: thank you, David, for all what you did for me, and rest in peace, because you were a great guy, and always will be remembered like that.
And I think all Chairboys fans would echo that as well. Gareth, this is probably the last time that we will be speaking in 2021. When you look back across the year, what are the things that stand out? What are the highlights for you?
Yeah, some fantastic moments. You know, the run in the championship that we almost pulled it off. You know, just in a crazy way. The relegation and the enthusiasm to get back in amongst it and start the season the way we did, the signings of, you know, your Sam Vokes and your Brandon Hanlon and my dialogue with the Coivd about, I want these players, yes, we'll go and get these players for you. I mean, just the turning round of this club to what we've been through. This is the year now where I'm thinking, finally, we have the club that I dreamed one day that I could be a part of, and the training ground, the pitches, the fans, the setup of the club. It's a really momentous year on that side of things. But you know, just proud again to have done another year at Wycombe Wanderers. I really love this place. You know, I just am blown away sometimes with the support I get, because year after year I get letters, I get support, I get people stopping me in the street and saying thanks for what you've done for Wycombe. And it's not just me. I take it and I love it, but every person has played their part, and I wake up seriously thinking, how lucky are you, Gareth? You get to manage a football club. People come up to you and thank you for what you've done, and I love my job. I really do. Love inspiring these boys. Good times, bad times. We know what we are, and we love what we are, and we love what we're becoming. And hopefully, one day we can be at that next level and be that established club, which at the second tier in English football would be an absolute momentous achievement for this football club. But you know what? We've been pretty successful already. Thanks for everyone for your support in 2021, and hopefully 2022 can be another great year for us. Merry Christmas, and if I don't speak to everyone, Happy New Year. Cheers.
And I can only echo Gareth's sentiments. Many, many thanks to him and to Matt Cecil for organising all of the interviews on Wycombe Sound throughout this year. Many thanks to Phil Catchpole and also to Danny Senda as well for taking part in the programme this week. We will be back next week, or I say we, actually it'll just be Colin next week, but we will be back together for the first Wycombe Wanderers show of 2021. Enjoy the game against Ipswich Town. Fingers crossed that it goes ahead. Ipswich are meant to have 26,000 people there, apparently. So if you are planning on going, make sure you go along and be in good voice as well. Have a super Christmas, and many thanks for listening.